Earlier this week, the U.S. marked the anniversary of the worst nuclear disaster in this country's history. The 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in the state of Pennsylvania suffered a catastrophic meltdown in 1979. CCTV's Jessica Stone returned to the plant to find out what the community has learned from that terrifying experience. She joins us now. Jessica, you were on the ground there. What was your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway was that people didn't do it overnight, but they did eventually learn to deal with their fears, and they also learned how to protect themselves if the unthinkable should happen again. What are we looking at?
We're looking at this. That isn't part of the forsythia, nor is this.
For 37 years, Helen Hocker has collected plant mutations like these. She blames radiation released from the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident here in Pennsylvania. So you've saved this from 1993?
That was from along here.
Oh, just where we were?
Yes, just where we were.
It was early in the morning, March 28, 1979. One of the reactors lost coolant, leading to a partial meltdown and radiation release. It's considered the worst nuclear disaster in U.S. history. After the 3 Mile Island accident, about 140,000 people evacuated, but surveys show most of them returned. They focused on protecting themselves and preparing for future disasters.
To me, I was caught short. Because I had no plan.
Bob Reed was the mayor of Middletown, Pennsylvania. He created an emergency response plan, and the town now drills every 2 years.
If something happens, we can hit one button and we can notify everyone in town.
This is our events.
Tom Foreman is now the town's emergency coordinator.
This is our pickup points where we pick the citizens up for evacuation with our school buses.
And everybody knows where to go?
Everyone knows where to go.
In the old days, you would put...
Eric Epstein runs 3 Mile Island Alert, a nonprofit which sued 3 Mile Island. He uses the settlement to run a network of radiation monitors he had installed around the plant.
After 20 years, we devised this monitor, which is a real-time monitor. And if you go to our website, you can get readings every minute.
Epstein now alerts the plant when there appears to be a problem. He believes people living near any nuclear power plant should have a relationship with its operators.
Ask good and hard questions, number one. Number two, make sure you have instruments that you can independently account for what happens at the plant. And number three, stay engaged. Stay engaged.
Patty was as tall as you were.
Yep, she was.
Helen Hocker still questions the safety of nuclear power. After the accident, she lost 2 children to cancer and says her community has been riddled with the disease. She blames the meltdown. Scientists remain divided, but at least one scientific study does link the accident's radiation release to elevated cancer rates nearby.
You know, we didn't know that much about it. We thought it was like one of those things that happens, and then the more we learned about it, because I became involved, the more we learned about it, the more we were frightened.
Hocker suggests people learn all they can about nuclear power so they can make up their own mind. And Michelle, what's also interesting is all the changes that the company that operates that nuclear power plant made. They overhauled their equipment, and they also implemented a lot of new training regimes. We actually got a chance to tour their training simulator. I want to have you take a look at that.
This is an exact replica of the control room in the plant. And we have our operators go through training once every 6 weeks. Anything that can happen in the plant can be replicated in this simulator. They don't know what gets thrown at them, but they have to be proficient. They have to pass their test in here, or they can't go back into the plant.
How would you stop what happened 37 years ago here at 3 Mile Island from happening again? The big problem was a loss of coolant and misreadings around the amount of water that was around the fuel rods, right?
Actually, it's pretty simple. And right here is the instruments to monitor the valve that's stuck open. We have additional instruments now, so if the operator saw that valve was stuck open, there is a second valve right on the same line. They would just hit this button and close the other valve.
And how quickly could you shut down the plant if you had to?
If we have to shut the plant down, an operator would come over here where it says reactor trip, this red button, and simply press that button. And that would insert all the control rods into the reactor, and the reactor would shut down within a second.
How do the people inside the control room know if radiation is released?
This panel right here has a a bank of different instruments that monitor the plant. We monitor the steam and the water in the plant and the air and the gas in the plant. If we had an issue in the plant where they reached a certain alarm level, they would go off and the operators would take the appropriate measures to isolate that part.
One of the most recent accidents, obviously, in nuclear is the accident that happened in Fukushima in Japan. What did you learn from that?
I think one of the big lessons from Fukushima was you need to be prepared for the absolute worst case type of event. And we have made over $25 million worth of upgrades in the past 5 years since Fukushima to ensure that no matter what happens, we have power at the plant. We have a way to put water into the reactor. That's the main thing.
Are you able to say that nuclear is 100% safe?
Well, I'm not sure if you can say anything is 100% safe. What I can tell people is that nuclear power in the United States is extremely safe. It's a very safe power source.
And Michelle, they did have all of these new improvements tested back in 1997. There was a power outage. Those diesel generators did kick in, and they were able to keep the fuel rods cool. But you know, this summit has really been all about securing nuclear materials and nuclear plants. That's something that they drill for too at 3 Mile Island. They told me that every 2 years they actually hire U.S. Special Forces and ex-Navy SEALs to try to storm the plant, and they have their security on guard and ready to go. And so far, all of those hired special operators and ex-Navy SEALs have not been able to get inside the plant, inside the security that's at 3 Mile Island. Michelle?